Okay, so we have made it to the final episode. This is the fourth part and the final part of National Treasure Kiri. And this episode was very trying, to say the least. Okay, so it opens with Kiri the morning of. So she's, waking up. She's kind of in her room and just kind of, she's still lying in bed. And you can kind of tell she's kind of excited about the day's events, right? And so all of a sudden she jumps up and she pulls her sock off and she holds it up to her nose and realizes that she is having a nosebleed. And it actually happened in episode 1 when she was in the back of the car. There seemed to be a reoccurring thing with her. It was never explained why she would have these, spontaneous nosebleeds, but this was one of those moments. And so, present day, Simon wakes up and he's kind of deep in thought, like I guess he's, still trying to figure things out. And he actually went to check on his parents. His parents were still asleep, and I guess he just went downstairs. And so, his parents eventually wake up, and she started asking him, her husband, why are there 2 condoms on the nightstand? And then he started telling her about how, it was a surprise that, she had gone to the police station and then she came home with 3 bottles of wine. And I don't know if they hooked up, had a little love making session, whatever the case may be. And he started talking about how, when he was younger, he didn't really like condoms, but as he's gotten older, he's learned to appreciate them. And then he starts telling her about the car and, how it was, good that she mentioned the car before because that wasn't made public. And so when she went and told that lie about seeing that particular car, Nate's car, in her neighborhood, it added more credibility because it wasn't something there wasn't anything that was released to the public. And so now, it's being pushed as something that the only way she would know that it was his car is that she actually saw the car. Now, keep in mind, only time she actually saw that car was when she followed Miriam when Miriam took Kiri to see her grandparents. That's when she saw the car, and that's when she saw Nate. Even though at the time she didn't know that was Nate, as time moved on, and of course his face and everything was in the paper, she knew who he was, and that's how she got that information, not because he was in her neighborhood. Okay, so we go to the police station, and they're now talking to Nate, and they're telling him that they have new evidence, and this new evidence is basically Miss Warner's recovered memory of seeing this gold BMW in her neighborhood, and how, there's now saying that he followed Kiri home, and, you said she got away from you, but your whereabouts between 1 and I think 1 and 6 or 1, there was this time gap where his movements was unaccounted for, and then your car was found during this time, and it was dumped around this time, and he was like, well, yeah, because I didn't want you guys looking for me. And Vanessa was asking him, so you were looking for her on foot? That didn't seem really logical. And he was like, yeah, because she was on foot. She was like, no, she took the bus home. He said, I know that now. And so now they're going back and forth, and she tells him that his car was seen in the neighborhood, and he's saying, well, no, my car wasn't seen in that neighborhood. I was never in their neighborhood. I don't even know where they live. And she started going on about, you followed her and what happened, she made you mad. You guys, because people saw you arguing. And so, that you struck her, or she's like going on and like really going at him. And he finally snaps and he starts banging his head on the table. Blood is pouring out of his head. It took the guy sitting next to her and a couple of other cops to come in to restrain him. And they end up having to take him to the hospital. So that morning, after their parents got up, they're now sitting down. After Simon's parents got up, they're now sitting down and they're talking to him. They're sending him to boarding school. Their rationale is that, things have been kind of rough for him lately with everything that's been going on. Of course, they feel like, because his whereabouts are still unaccounted for, so they're working on the premise that he was the one who actually did something to Kiri, and so they're trying to basically send him away without really telling him why. They know that he's been having trouble, they know that he's been cutting school, and they feel like this is going to be, they're selling it to him as this is going to be a way for him to get back on track. And he really didn't fight against it. He was, whatever. And so now we get to the point where it was finally explained how Kiri's shirt ended up in his trash bin. So that morning she went into his room and she still had the bloody sock in her hand where her nose was still bleeding. And she threw the bloody sock in his trash. And he's like, "You just gonna throw that sock in my trash?" He was like, "Well, yeah." He was like, you're actually kind of disgusting. And so they laughed a little bit. And then she was asking him, like, which shirt should she wear? And of course, the shirt that she didn't wear, that was the shirt that was found in his trash bin. And then she asked him if he wanted to watch TV. And of course he said yes. And then they made a point to zoom in on the trash bin where you see the shirt. Now, of course, I'm assuming this is that morning when Miss Warner came downstairs and saw them watching TV and turned the TV off, and then, he was behind the couch and the whole thing. So this is, I'm assuming this would be that same morning. Miriam is home, and I still don't know this woman's name. I am so sorry. It seemed like this would have been one of her children who was in the system, who she kept tabs on, who, we've seen her in a few episodes now. And so she went by Miriam's house, and, she knew that she was stressed and going through a lot, and so she wanted to surprise her. So she asked her if she wanted to go for a walk, and they ended up back at her place. And there were these 3 other people. And, she was telling her that, there are people out there basically trying to reassure her that there are people out there that still love her. Those 3 individuals were actually 3 of her children, and they were there to all thank her for caring enough and for being in their lives and, placing them in loving homes, and how they were able to turn their lives around because of her. And it was a joy. It was a boost to her. She was really proud, excited, and happy, that they all seem to be doing very well. But at the same time, she did get emotional because she still, she feels guilty about Kiri. And, she's taking some responsibility for it, but, so that, she's torn. Her emotions, it was an emotional scene. She's happy for them, but still grieving for Kiri. So we're now at the hospital. Toby has arrived. He's talking to the police officer, and he's telling him that this was self-inflicted. We did not attack him. He did this. But you can go in and talk to him. So he goes and talks to him, and Nate starts telling him that they're going to arrest me, and he was like, "Well, we already knew that he was going to be arrested. That you're going to be arrested for the abduction." And this is when he drops a bomb on him and say, "Well, no, they're going to arrest me for the murder." And his whole face expression changed. Like, what in the world are you talking about? They have the video footage of you guys not even being anywhere near each other, or at least but at this. Okay, granted, his whereabouts have been is unaccounted for a large time gap, but he still is struggling with how they are making that leap that he killed Kiri. And so he storms out and he walks right past Vanessa, and Vanessa kind of scrunch her face up at him as he walks by. So Miriam is now going to another meeting, and this is where the final decision has been made. She basically, as soon as she sat down, first they asked her if she was, if she had a rep, and she was like, "No, my rep don't. We're not on the same page, so I just came and let's just do this and get this over with." And so she initially said, "Okay, I resign. I take full responsibility." And then the guy was like, "Well, no, we have to go through." She was like, "Why? I don't really give, a crap about what's in there. I'm just telling, I want to resign." So he's like, "Well, we have to go through this." And so he started going through this stuff. And of course, every once in a while she would interrupt and talk about, "Well, that's ridiculous," or "I already knew that." And, basically just going back and forth. Eventually, Julie was like, "You know what? Just skip to the end and put us all out of our misery." And so they basically, in the end, found that she was negligent, that she was responsible. And before he could finish, she said, "You know what? Okay, I see what this is. You won't let me resign because you need to fire me. By them firing her, she lose her benefits. Now, this is a woman who has like 30-something years as a social worker, her pension and all that kind of stuff. So them firing her, as opposed to her resigning, is going to have a detrimental effect on her, not only professionally, but financially. And so she finally gets up and she tells them, basically exactly how she feels, like how she feels guilty about what happened. But she also feels guilt, she's also angry that, they're basically always under a microscope for and they get dinged for every mistake that they make. And, she does take responsibility for it, but, this is no longer about her, about me. And this is about her, Kiri, and, just the whole system. And she just goes on and on. And then in the end, she basically says, but I do want to go on record. Basically, she wanted to go on record saying, I love my job. She was walking out. Julie stands up and tells her that, she loved working with her and that she learned a lot from her. And Miriam was like, okay, well, that's good to know. And then she just walked out. Like, what the hell was the point of saying that? Child, please. Okay. Anyway. So the next stop Miriam makes, she went to see her mom, and she basically explained the situation to her mom. You're going to have to come and live with me. I'm no longer going to be able to afford to keep you here. And with, whatever disability or social security that her mom is getting, along with whatever, she's getting, she's saying that if we, come by us living together, we won't be comfortable, but we'll scrape by. And surprisingly, her mom was like, oh, okay, so you only want me to come live with you for the financial benefits. And so Miriam was like, well, yeah. So the mom was like, well, I'm okay with that. It sounds like fun, right? And so, surprisingly, she didn't give her a hard time. It was as simple as that. And even she was surprised. She was like, oh, okay, Mom. She was like, what, Mom, don't ruin this moment by saying something racist. And she was like, I wasn't going to say anything of the sort, right? So, as Nate is being released from the hospital, Vanessa's there to basically read him his rights. They're charging him with the murder of Kiri, and she basically explained to him, what was going to happen next, and he had to sign something. I guess signed to be released. I guess from the hospital or something. And you can see on her face that she's not 100% sold on him being being responsible for this, but the system, things are what they are, based on the evidence. It's Lord, it's just like, Lord, just that one decision to take her from the house when you knew that you weren't even supposed to be there. It just says, put his life, his family's life, just everybody's life in an uproar. Okay. So, we're back at the Warner house, and his mom, Alice is washing dishes, and Simon walks in and kind of talked a little bit, and he starts, saying that, asking her if she was okay, and if they were okay, and she was telling him yes, and everything is fine. And then she starts asking him, he was like, well, why don't you look at me? He was like, well, you haven't, you don't really talk to me anymore, and, you don't really look at me. And then she turns to look at him, and then you can see, she's started getting emotional. And then she starts talking about, did you hear that Nate was arrested? And he was like, well, yeah, but I think that's odd because, I believe that was the whole reason that they interviewed us, was because he wasn't there. And then she started saying, well, I think it has something to do with me. I saw his car in the neighborhood, and they, the police just, did what, based on that information, found that it was enough evidence to move forward with charges. And you can see that he's kind of unsure, like, what in the world is going on? What? Okay. So he, walks on, he left the kitchen. So Vanessa ends up showing up at the Akadeli house, and she wanted to talk to Toby, and she basically told him that he needs to get a good defense for his son, and how he needs to be the man. She was like, I know men like you're weak, and your son, this boy. And he was like, he's not a boy, he's a grown man. And she was like, no, he's a boy. He's not a boy, he is a grown man. He may be emotionally, but he's a man. he's been out in them streets. He's been around the block a time or two. You know what I'm saying? He's not a child chronologically. But he's still, I guess she was trying to say that he still needs guidance. He still needs your support. I mean, that's basically what she said. And I need you to step up. I need you to be the man in this situation and do what you need to do to get him the defense that he needs. And she, I don't know, even though he asked her, do you think that he's innocent? And she basically said, no, I do think that he did it. And I don't know if she really thinks that he did it, or if she, just felt like she had to say that just in case, because she wasn't really supposed to be there talking to him. And so she basically told him, you need to be in his corner, get him the support and the defense that he needs. And she walked out. And so we flashed to Simon. Simon is now going for what I thought initially was for a walk, but he was actually meeting up with Miriam. And, they started talking. And this conversation about the truth came up. And she started, he started asking her, like, okay, he started throwing out some examples. And he's like, at what age do you tell a child the truth? Or when is the right time to tell someone the truth? And then he started asking her about his mom and saying that my mom followed you that day, didn't she? And she was like, well, what does that have to do with anything? And then he kind of was like, okay. So now his wheels are spinning. And she was like, well, no, it was just something that I was thinking about. And then she started telling him that about Kiri. Like she was like, I never told Kiri how we found her. She had been in, near her her mother's dead body for 16 hours. And, she was probably unclean. And, it was just, I can't only imagine that sight. He said, but she was like, so, there are times where you withhold the truth. Like, there was no reason for her to know that. And so, she started talking about, how she felt about Kiri and how Kiri was special to her. Maybe it's because, she got Kiri a week after her own son had passed. Because remember in the first episode, I believe, she said her son passed away at 13 from cancer. And that's when, Kiri came into her life. And I think she became attached to Kiri. Emotionally, she loved Kiri. And she said maybe that wasn't such a good thing because I feel like I let her down. And Simon, eventually said that, I feel like I let her down too. And so we flashed to the Warner residence where Miss Warner is sitting there watching the news, and it's Vanessa doing a press conference basically telling them that they're charging Nate with the murder. And the husband walks in and was like, well, that's good. They got him. They caught him. And so she gets up and walks out, and she goes in front of the news, the crew that's standing out in front of her house, and she's saying that, for people, people keep telling me that I'm not her mom, that she's not my daughter, and, families are more than that. And then she pulls out, but, what we want is for people to focus on what the most important thing. And she pulled this photo of Kiri out of this envelope and she gave it to a reporter. And then she just started passing them out to all the reporters. And then she eventually just started throwing them out, just pulling, just this whole dramatic scene, right? And then she walks off. And I'm thinking to myself, bitch, you just sat up and lied on this man. You knowingly went in there and told him you saw that car in that neighborhood that you did not see in order to cover what you believe to be your son's ass. Okay, so this whole performance this is about Kiri and this is about family and this whole crap, all of that crap went out the window when one of your own's head was possibly going to be on the chopping block. Then Kiri quickly became the other. Her life quickly became far less important than that of their own child, who they at this point believe that he is responsible for her death. So they're doing all of this behind the scenes while at the same time arguing with people about what people should consider family, and how they feel about not being considered family because they're white and she's black, and they're trying to they're making this whole statement, but at the same time you knowingly lied to get this man who his innocence at this point is up in the air. Like there's no silver bullet that's saying at this point any evidence saying that he had anything to do with his daughter's death. But at this point, you in your heart of hearts at this point know that your son is possibly responsible for her death. And when it came down to it, it wasn't about Kiri. It was about saving one of your own. Like I said, she quickly became other. She was no longer family when it came to one of your own. So that scene was very frustrating and upsetting. So now this one is in the bathroom. Simon walks in and they start talking, and he starts talking about he was asking why he was shaving. Is it because of the news crew? And he was like, he was just shaving, I guess, to be shaving. And he started asking him about, well, what's going on with mom? I think she believes that that I had something to do with this. She won't even look at me. And he said, well, no, she doesn't. That's not true. And he was like, well, it feels like it's true when you consider the fact that she's the only person that I really give a crap about, other than me. And then his father, you can kind of see his father's face. Like, he was like, why are you shocked that I don't, that I say I only care about mom? Well, there was this other person that I cared about, Kiri, but now she's gone. And so he said that, and now, I feel like you were the one that did it, that you killed her. And so he turned to look at him, and they started talking, and they eventually went into his parents' room. And he's like, well, Dad, you said that, why were you home? And his dad was like, well, I was at work. Dave said, Dave lied. Why were you home? And he was, they're going back and forth and a little bit, and he's like, Dad, I'm not going to say anything, but I really want to know what happened. What did you do? He said, and I know that you panicked because you came home and you started cleaning up, and I knew that something was off because when Mom came to me and asked me about why the shirt was in my bin, she asked me why the shirt was in my bin, not the shirt and a bloody sock. Because if you remember, Kiri threw that bloody sock in his trash too. Remember earlier when she was like, oh, you really are disgusting, and she was like, well, whatever. And they kind of laughed it off. So you panicked and when you came in the house, and he was like, I was trying to figure out why you were in my room. And so eventually he told him that he came home and he found her packing, and she was telling him that she wanted to go and stay with her dad for a while just to get to know him, and that she would come back. And so he said that he would take her to her father. And the only reason he did that because he initially wanted to confront the dad. And so she took him back to where she was last with her dad. She didn't go back to her grandparents' house. But of course her father was no longer there because he was out looking for her. And so he said that, they started talking, and, he knew that Kiri at this point was the only really thing holding their family together. They found common ground with her. And, at least, that, Simon loved her. And I do think that Alice loved her to a certain extent. Well, to a certain extent until it became about her or Simon. Then, we saw what happened with that. But I don't know if the husband really loved her or he saw her as a means of keeping his family together. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't really think that he was that I don't know. That's what I get. I just don't see that he loved her. She was just a means of keeping his family together, which was more important to him than anything. Or at least keeping his wife. Now the son, he already threw under the bus with the mom. He was the one that planted the seed in her head about him, that the son possibly doing it. Even him himself being the actual murderer threw his own son under the bus. So now when I think about it, it wasn't necessarily keep his family together. It was about keeping his wife there, because they were on the knife's edge, and they were, It was about to go over that edge and right into divorce court. So it was mainly about keeping his wife. So he started talking about that, and how he got so angry. How she talked about her real dad, and how we saved her, this crack baby is what he referred to her as. How we took her in and we tried to give her the best life, and and she got upset and she started running, and then she fell and hit her head. And I think, she hit her head, but it didn't kill her, so he eventually ends up strangling her. While he was telling the story, he kind of freaked out, got upset. He flashed on Simon and said, he flashed on the wife in the bedroom. And you see where the door panels, he punched those out. And then he was like, he got so frustrated. And so after he goes through the whole story, Simon turns and he just runs, he walks out. And so the next scene, we see the Acadeli's meeting with the guy who the pastor introduced him to initially. And Toby was basically like, you do what I need you to pay for his defense. I want this to be about him and defending him. I do not want all this political stuff. And so, I guess once he made himself clear, that was that. And so Miriam is now at the vet. The dog has been at the vet's for some time now, and she is just sitting in the waiting room. She's waiting for, I guess, whatever. So as soon as he came out, she was like, "Oh, he's dead, isn't he?" And he was like, "No, he did pretty good, and I'm not gonna lie, he probably has maybe a couple of months, maybe even a year. But for now, they did some procedure, and he now has this cone on his head, and she is just ecstatic, to have him back." And so, the reason I clipped this, I was like, okay, wait a minute. So now you have Simon and his mom in the car driving down the road, and I don't know if you could see in the background there, or and over here, where you see Miriam walking the dog. So I don't know if the mom noticed her, but it seemed like Simon did. And so they're just in silence, just driving down the road. And so we go to the prison. Nate's obviously there, and he can hear this chanting outside, and then you see that there's a protest going outside, which was obviously set up by the guy. And you see Vanessa, she's kind of standing watching the protest. She wasn't upset or anything. She was just standing there inside the police station, just watching them, say what they had to say and their chants or whatever the case may be. And so we flash to Simon and his mom. They're, have this really quiet drive to the boarding school, I guess, where he's going to spend the next, few years or whatever. So they finally arrive. And then he starts, they start talking. And he was like, I think this is going to be good. I'm okay with this, and I'm really okay with spending Dad's money. And I hope that Dad's money, goes to more than, you should go on a spending spree, starting with the divorce. And she kind of shook her head, like, yeah, okay, that's going to probably be her next step. And then he says to her, "I'm going to say something to you, and I don't want you to say anything back." And then he tells her that he loves her. And I guess he doesn't reflect. She says that I love you too. And then he says, "I told you not to say anything, and no, you don't. But I think that one day you might, you will. One day you will love me, love me again." And she didn't. I was expecting something like, "Well, what are you talking about? I always loved you." And she didn't say nothing. She sat there and she got teary-eyed. Like, okay, well, what the hell? What's going on here? So now keep in mind, at this point, she's still thinking of her son as this murderer. So now that, when I think about her reaction, I'm like, okay. Even though I was like, kind of like, well, your son just, he said that he doesn't think that you love him, and you just kind of sat there all with your eyes all teared up. Okay, anyway, so eventually he said his goodbyes, and he got his stuff out the trunk. And as he was walking away, he kind of stopped. And then he turned, like he was mulling over, I guess that conversation about the truth and when is the right time to tell the truth. And then you flashed to the dad, and there was a very distinct sound in the background, which is a clock ticking, like almost like his I don't know what that was like. I don't know, his freedom quickly coming to an end, or his marriage, something is eventually going to end. I don't know what, but it was very loud ticking, and it was very distinctive, and it was a clock that was, ticking. Something was winding down, whether it was his freedom, whether it's his life, whether it's his marriage, his relationship with the son is, I can imagine, it's over. But I feel like that clock was signaling something was ending. And unfortunately, that's how the episode ends. So it's opening like, okay, so what happened? So you have this black man who didn't commit the murder. Yes, he's guilty of the abduction, but not the murder. You have a 30-year veteran social worker whose reputation and career is in tatters, and is basically now at the point where she is going to have to scrape by to survive. And you have this son who has this stigma on him, at least by his parents, at least by his mother, because obviously his father did, because his father knows the truth, but this cloud over him pertaining to his mother and what she thinks of him. She sees him as a murderer. And so it's like, okay, what's going to happen? Is he going to tell, and that was the whole question, is he going to tell the truth? Is he going, because initially when he talked to his father, he said that he wasn't going to tell anybody, but, that's a lot of things that are lives that are hanging in the balance at this point. And it's like, okay, y'all supposed to all be family, Kiri was supposed to be one of the family, and again, like I said, when it came down to it, Kiri quickly became othered when it came to protecting. You guys closed ranks pretty quickly when it came to protecting one of your own. So this show, like I said, this episode was very frustrating, but it was a good series, thought-provoking, and if you've seen it, please leave your comments and your thoughts in the comment section, and I'm going to end this here, and I will talk to you guys later.